Every embrace on stage felt poised and ceremonial. Every conversation was polished, thoughtful, and wrapped in the elegance that defined the show's atmosphere. During the 1980s and 90s, Oprah Winfrey's Harpo Studios became a powerful gathering place for a generation of iconic Black actresses. They arrived with grace, legacy, and stories that carried the weight of their era. Under the bright studio lights, their fame shimmered effortlessly, flawless, unforgettable, almost untouchable. But beyond the velvet curtains and quiet backstage hallways, reality wasn't always as glamorous as it seemed. Not scandals about money or power, but small, oddly human moments, awkward, unexpected, and sometimes impossible to describe without a hint of discomfort. The kind of details that remind you celebrities are, at the end of the day, just people navigating long days under pressure. And Oprah, standing at the center of it all, witnessed more of those raw, unfiltered moments than anyone else. What you're about to hear pulls back that curtain, not to tear down legends, but to reveal the strange, surprising, and deeply human side of life behind one of television's most iconic stages. These are the stories that never made it into the polished broadcast. The moments that challenge the glossy Hollywood image and show a reality far more complicated than perfection. Olivia Colman. Backstage at Harpo Studios, a sharp, sour smell, almost like vinegar left too long in a sealed bottle, hung in the air, making the tight space feel suffocating. Olivia Colman was a respected American screen veteran, best known for her powerful role in the landmark miniseries Roots. She was a familiar face in discussions about Black film history, often praised by critics and scholars for her emotional depth and commanding presence. At the height of her career, her reputation was so strong that her mere arrival could shift the energy of an entire room. But behind the polished image were moments that quietly cracked the illusion of perfection. On October 18, 1989, Harpo Studios in Chicago buzzed with excitement ahead of a major promotional push. The cast gathered backstage, energized and busy. Olivia had just landed after a long flight from Los Angeles and went straight to the studio without rest. Oprah greeted her warmly with a hug, an affectionate gesture between respected colleagues. In that brief, intimate moment, a sour, pungent odor rose unexpectedly from Olivia's scalp, catching Oprah off guard and making her slightly dizzy. Oprah didn't react harshly. She understood the likely cause: the heavy wigs Olivia wore for long periods to maintain Miss Sophie's look. Layers of synthetic hair pressed tightly against the scalp, trapping sweat from hours of travel. Up close, the smell was intense, like opening a vinegar jar that had been sealed for months. Though uncomfortable, Oprah maintained her professional composure. Her body, however, reacted instinctively. She held her breath and stepped back just enough to create space without breaking the polite atmosphere. Others approached Olivia with hugs and handshakes, and subtle shifts rippled through the room, awkward glances, chairs moving slightly farther away, small gestures that hinted at shared discomfort. As days passed, production continued at full speed, but Oprah naturally kept a bit more distance during interactions, a quiet act of self-preservation. Then in early December 1989, another moment deepened the tension. After the successful wrap of the Brewster Play series, the cast gathered for a celebratory dinner at a cozy restaurant near the studio. Soft golden lights glowed overhead, gentle music filled the room, and the clinking of silverware created a relaxed mood. Oprah was seated beside Olivia, and their conversation began warmly, filled with laughter and reflections on their careers. Everything felt easy, until Olivia leaned in to whisper. A familiar sour scent drifted from her wig, but this time it was layered with something new: the smoky sharpness of dried fish mixed with the bite of raw onions. The smell lingered heavily in the air. Olivia often snacked on Jamaican dried fish, and without strong oral hygiene afterward, the scent clung stubbornly. Combined with the sweat trapped beneath days-old wigs, the effect was overwhelming. Oprah never showed visible discomfort, but her subtle reactions told the story. She sipped coffee repeatedly, as if using the rich aroma as a shield. Conversations shifted quickly, avoiding close whispers. Her speaking pace grew brisk, and she focused on her meal, almost as if eager to bring the evening to a polite close. These moments never appeared on camera and were never discussed publicly, yet they remained quietly etched in the memories of those who worked closely with Olivia. Her talent, influence, and years of experience were undeniable. Still, alongside her brilliance were ordinary human flaws, habits that reminded everyone that even the most admired figures carry imperfections behind the glow of the spotlight. Lonette McKee. Lonette McKee. The sharp sting of sweat hung in the air, like sour yogurt tangled with the bite of rotting onions. Once, Lonette McKee was a luminous presence on the American screen, a face that carried both elegance and edge. Known for her work in The Women of Brewster Place, the Oprah-produced miniseries, she brought depth and personality to every role she touched. Yet as time moved on, the spotlight shifted elsewhere, and her name slowly faded from the loud conversations of Hollywood. Late December 1989. The Harpo Productions office buzzed with the restless energy of post-filming chaos. Meetings stacked back-to-back, phones rang endlessly, and everyone moved at double speed, walking fast, talking fast, thinking even faster. The air felt heavy, tense, almost suffocating. Into that whirlwind stepped Lonette, fresh off a flight from New York. She was impeccably dressed, posture straight, confidence glowing, the look of a seasoned actress who took pride in her discipline and appearance. Oprah greeted her warmly with a tight, affectionate hug, the kind reserved for trusted collaborators. But before the moment could fully settle, a sharp, acidic wave of scent rose from Lonette's underarms and struck Oprah's senses without warning. It didn't creep in slowly, it hit all at once. Lonette had been practicing intense yoga every morning to stay in peak shape for her role as Lorraine. After workouts, sweat soaked deep into her skin, and instead of a thorough cleanse, she layered heavy perfume on top. The result was an odd chemical clash, sweet from afar, painfully sour up close. To Oprah, it felt like standing over a bowl of yogurt tossed with crushed, rotting onions. She ended the hug quickly, just a subtle shift, a small pause that bought her time to think. Oprah stepped toward a nearby window and opened it wide, pretending she simply wanted to freshen the stuffy room. The gesture was natural enough that Lonette didn't feel embarrassed or singled out. But when Lonette began greeting others, lifting her arms high with carefree enthusiasm, the room's mood shifted instantly. No one said a word. Still, people quietly adjusted their positions, creating invisible distance, breathing more cautiously. The movements were subtle, barely noticeable unless you were looking closely. Lonette, calm and composed, remained unaware of the strong odor clinging to her. Seated at the table, she spoke passionately about her training routine, her determination to maintain a flawless figure, her refusal to appear careless on camera. Ironically, that very dedication, the perfectionism she prided herself on, had become the source of an awkward, unforgettable meeting. Less than a month later, on January 20th, 1990, the miniseries held a preview screening at a small theater near the studio. The room was dim, cramped, and warm with anticipation. Afterward, cast and crew gathered in a tight waiting area to share reactions before final edits. Lonette sat close beside Oprah, eager to discuss Lorraine's emotional layers and the complexity of her performance. But as soon as she began speaking, another wave hit, this time from her breath. Lonette had adopted the habit of eating raw garlic daily as a natural health ritual. The lingering sulfur clung stubbornly to her mouth, especially without brushing or rinsing. Each word released a heat-thick scent, like overcooked rotten eggs rising into the air. The mood between them shifted instantly. Oprah lifted a hand lightly over her nose and lips, pretending to be deep in thought, her eyes gazing into the distance. The gesture looked thoughtful, contemplative, but it was really a quiet defense against the overwhelming smell. Across the room, others reacted just as subtly. One colleague turned slightly away mid-conversation, covering their mouth as if coughing. Another stretched stiffly, nudging their chair back to gain a few inches of space. Lonette remained unaware, speaking with enthusiasm about character depth, emotional immersion, and fearless acting choices. Yet the invisible haze of garlic dulled the seriousness of every word she shared. The discussion wrapped up quickly. Feedback came in short, rushed bursts, especially from Oprah and the person seated beside Lonette. Everyone seemed eager to escape the heavy, garlic-thick air. Moments like these never appeared in press releases or glossy promotions. They existed only as quiet, lingering memories behind the scenes, where the polished glow of cinema gave way to the imperfect, deeply human habits no one ever planned to spotlight. Mary Alice. A name that carried the weight of decades on stage and screen. A veteran American actress known for her quiet intensity and the kind of presence that seemed to belong to another era. Her aura felt like walking into a room filled with history, rich, layered, unforgettable. She was often invited to programs celebrating legendary Black performers, her reputation built not on noise, but on depth, resilience, and craft. On March 10, 1989, a studio backstage area buzzed long before sunrise. Makeup artists moved swiftly under harsh white lights. The air hung thick with hairspray and powder, sweet scents blending together in a familiar production day haze. A group cast interview was scheduled in a closed room, and everyone prepared with focused energy. Mary Alice entered calmly, her posture steady, her face composed with the confidence of someone who had spent decades under stage lights. Oprah greeted her warmly, a firm handshake followed by a gentle hug, the natural affection of longtime acquaintances. But before the greeting fully settled, Oprah caught an unexpected scent in the air. It wasn't sharp or sudden. It lingered, heavy, damp, and stubborn, like the inside of a wardrobe left closed for years. The smell clung quietly to Mary's clothing, subtle at first but persistent, settling into the room like an unseen fog. It resembled the musty softness of old fabric stored too long without air. Mary was known for re-wearing carefully tailored outfits from the 1970s, treasured pieces she kept as reminders of her journey. She rarely sent them to dry cleaning, worried about damaging the delicate material or losing their original shape. Over time, oils, dust, and age had woven themselves into the fibers, creating a scent that no perfume could fully hide. Inside the enclosed makeup room, the smell felt almost physical, weighing down the atmosphere. Even the strong fragrance of cosmetics couldn't mask it. Oprah, ever graceful, reacted with subtlety, turning her head slightly, breathing slower, and quietly signaling staff to increase the fan speed. The fan roared to life, sending powder swirling and hair fluttering across the room. But when Mary stepped directly into the airflow, the scent spread even more, prompting a few people to shift their positions without comment. Oprah quickly, gently guided her away from the direct wind, maintaining dignity for everyone involved. Mary seemed unaware of any discomfort. She sat in her chair chatting warmly about upcoming interviews and public appearances, her smile bright and genuine. As tapings continued over the following months, the issue faded into the background. Most days she wore wardrobe costumes provided by the production, and no one openly complained. After all, nothing crossed the line into outright offense. Then, in late May 1990, the cast gathered to celebrate the premiere of Brewster Place. The party was held in a cozy venue filled with golden light and soft music. Small groups laughed and clinked glasses as conversations floated across the room. Mary pulled Oprah aside to a quiet corner for a private chat. At first, the moment felt relaxed and warm, two professionals reflecting on their shared journey. But when Mary reached out to smooth a loose strand of hair from Oprah's forehead, a different scent emerged, rich, buttery, and faintly sour. It came from a homemade skin cream Mary carried in her purse, crafted from pure cocoa butter. She used it constantly, a familiar comfort she'd relied on for years. Unfortunately, without refrigeration, the cream had begun to spoil. Mixed with warmth and sweat, it produced a heavy fragrance that became overwhelming at close range. The scent didn't fill the entire room, only those standing close could notice it, especially when Mary's hands moved near their faces. Oprah maintained her composure, offering a polite smile while subtly shifting her posture to create space. After a few more exchanges, she rose gracefully and offered to bring drinks, using the moment as a natural pause from the increasingly confined corner. Mary continued speaking animatedly, her voice deep and expressive, her eyes shining with enthusiasm, unaware of the delicate adjustments Oprah made throughout the conversation. For Mary, these habits were simply part of daily life, deeply ingrained and comforting. Yet in close backstage environments where personal space vanished, small details could become unexpectedly noticeable. Despite these awkward moments, Oprah's respect for Mary Alice's talent and legacy never wavered. Her admiration remained intact, but the sensory memories of those encounters, deeply personal and oddly vivid, lingered quietly in the background of shared history. Gloria Foster. Gloria Foster. Backstage, the air felt heavy, thick with a sharp, sour scent, almost like blue cheese left too long in a damp room. A veteran character actress who built her career through steady supporting roles from the 80s into the 90s, Gloria later became widely remembered by audiences for her presence in The Matrix. She was frequently invited to programs honoring Black women in film, respected for both her resilience and her long journey through Hollywood's unpredictable tides. In late October 1992, Harpo Studios prepared to tape a special episode celebrating veteran Black actors. The atmosphere was both formal and warm, filled with admiration and a gentle nostalgia. Gloria arrived wearing a wool hat pulled low over her head, an inseparable part of her image. The moment Oprah saw her, she walked over with genuine excitement, greeting Gloria with deep respect for a woman who had endured so many highs and lows in the industry. Their embrace was light and sincere, yet something unspoken hung in the air. A strong, greasy scalp odor lingered beneath Gloria's hat. Her hair had thinned with age, and she wore the hat constantly to cover it, but she often went days without washing it. Oil built up, fermented in the heat of crowded rooms, creating a sour, musty smell that clung stubbornly to her. Oprah kept her breathing shallow and steady to avoid discomfort, while a few nearby guests subtly stepped back, their eyes flicking toward Gloria's hat before turning away, leaving behind an awkward silence no one could quite name. Sensing the tension, Oprah gently guided Gloria toward a more open, airy hallway under the pretense of continuing their conversation somewhere quieter. A cool breeze drifted through, softening the odor that hovered around her. Gloria chatted passionately, reminiscing about old roles and sharing her feelings about being overlooked during a stagnant period in her career. Ironically, her increasingly private lifestyle in recent years had only reinforced her constant hat habit. For Gloria, that hat was more than a fashion choice. It was armor, shielding her insecurities and protecting her dignity. Oprah understood this deeply and responded with empathy rather than judgment. But the challenges didn't end there. In early 1993, after a brief New Year interview, Oprah and Gloria sat together in a closed green room waiting for tea. Chicago's weather that day was unusually humid and hot, leaving the small space stuffy and uncomfortable. Within minutes, a sharp, nose-piercing odor began to rise from beneath the table. It was the pungent smell of foot sweat drifting from the thick wool socks Gloria wore year-round to keep her joints warm. Even with daily changes, the scent had built up over time, a sour mix reminiscent of apple vinegar and damp mildew. The smell slowly crept across the room, wrapping itself around the tea table. Oprah calmly shifted her chair back a few inches, maintaining a composed expression. She politely suggested that staff bring in disposable hotel slippers so everyone could feel more comfortable relaxing. Gloria, cheerful and unaware of the tension, quickly agreed and slipped off her shoes and socks. While she enjoyed the newfound comfort, others struggled quietly, soft coughs echoed, and a few guests stood up under the excuse of stretching their legs. No one spoke directly, yet the lingering odor from the socks and shoes piled in the corner seemed to dictate every movement in the room. Eventually, Oprah leaned toward a staff member and whispered gently, "Let's move everyone's footwear outside the door. It'll make the room feel less crowded." With that subtle act of kindness and grace, she restored a sense of ease to the space without ever embarrassing her longtime colleague. Paula Kelly. Paula Kelly, the sharp, fermented scent of sweat hanging in the air like spoiled vinegar and oil. A singer-turned-actress known for Sweet Charity and The Women of Brewster Place, she built a long, resilient career, always close to the spotlight even when never fully centered in it. On January 11, 1990, inside a small, closed meeting room at Harpo Studios under cold fluorescent lights, the air already felt tight and heavy. With the door shut and everyone seated shoulder to shoulder, Paula entered with the confident posture of a seasoned dancer, sweat still glistening on her skin after relentless rehearsals and non-stop filming. Oprah stepped forward to greet her with a warm, familiar hug, gratitude for Paula's deeply emotional role as Teresa. But in that instant, a sour, piercing smell, sweat mixed with stale olive oil, hit Oprah all at once, clinging to Paula's body like an invisible cloak. Paula had a habit of massaging her skin with natural olive oil after intense dance practices to keep her muscles flexible. When the oil soaked into overheated skin and wasn't washed off quickly because of her crushing schedule, it began to ferment, creating a scent like vinegar-soaked oil forgotten too long in a kitchen. In the already sealed room, the smell thickened the atmosphere even more. Oprah tried to control her breathing, timing each inhale carefully as she hugged Paula. Once the greeting ended, she sat down at what felt like a safe distance, but the scent still lingered. Others in the room shifted subtly in their chairs, leaning back just enough to escape the heavy current in the air. No one complained, yet the smell quietly dominated the entire space. Paula seemed to notice the distance but remained lively and confident. Her body energized, movements bold and free, the rhythm of a lifetime in dance visible in every gesture. To her, olive oil wasn't just self-care, it was a dancer's ritual, a badge of hard work. Time rushed forward to late May 1990. Backstage before a promotional session for the Brewster Play series, the crowded waiting room buzzed with warmth and chatter. Chairs were pressed together, and Oprah sat beside Paula to ask about her experience playing a groundbreaking lesbian character, a sensitive but important conversation. As soon as they began speaking, another sharp wave hit the air. Paula had a daily habit of chewing fresh black pepper mixed with a spoonful of garlic oil, believing it boosted metabolism and fit a dancer's disciplined lifestyle. The strong pepper-garlic aroma clung to her breath, blending with the heat of the room into a pungent, sulfur-like scent, something between cigarette smoke and overripe cheese. Each time Paula burst into laughter, the smell seemed to intensify, drifting directly across to Oprah. Oprah kept smiling and nodding, appearing deeply engaged, though she quietly tried to limit her breathing. To avoid seeming awkward, she occasionally reached for a glass of ice water, using it as a subtle shield. The cool sip helped soften the moment just enough. Meanwhile, Paula continued speaking with bright eyes and unstoppable enthusiasm. For her, chewing pepper and garlic oil was part of strict body discipline, no different from dance training or dieting. Minor sacrifices like strong breath were, in her mind, simply the price of maintaining flexibility and endurance in a demanding career, even when that habit unknowingly became a burden for the person sitting across from her. Barbara Montgomery. A familiar face on the small screen, she drifted quietly through shows like Amen and a string of TV movies. One of those dedicated, middle-aged black actresses who worked for decades with quiet professionalism but rarely stood in the center of the spotlight. In early April 1990, Harpo Studios buzzed with frantic energy as a group interview was being prepared for promotion. Backstage, the makeup room overflowed with actors, hot lights glaring against oversized mirrors while laughter and chatter filled the thick, steamy air. Barbara arrived in a simple cotton dress she had worn through years of work. To her, it wasn't just clothing, it carried memories from long filming days in the 70s. She rarely sent it to the dry cleaner, afraid the color would fade and take those memories with it. When Oprah walked into the room, she greeted everyone warmly, offering quick hugs to calm pre-show nerves. When she reached Barbara, the hug lasted only a second, but long enough for a damp, musty scent to rise from the fabric. It smelled like old wood soaked through too many rainy seasons, a mix of sweat and time. Oprah's expression stayed composed, yet her body shifted back half a step in a reflex she barely noticed herself. After greeting the rest of the cast, she quietly asked an assistant for room freshener. Minutes later, several wooden stick diffusers appeared on the table, their fragrance slowly filling the space and masking the lingering odor. Barbara seemed completely unaware, or perhaps that scent felt like a badge of years spent working hard. She sat in the makeup chair, adjusting her hair with the calm confidence of someone who knew backstage chaos by heart. Just over a month later, on May 16th, after lunch with the Brewster Place cast at a restaurant near the studio, Oprah and Barbara found themselves seated close again. Most of the group drifted into separate conversations while Oprah leaned in to discuss Barbara's grandmother role and how she built such a believable older woman presence on screen. As Barbara spoke, a sharp, sour smell rose from her breath, strong enough to make anyone instinctively wrinkle their nose. Oprah glanced at the table and noticed a small bag of homemade Southern-style pickles in front of Barbara, only a few pieces left. The snack, cucumbers soaked in vinegar with raw onions, was something Barbara swore by for staying healthy in middle age. The problem was she hadn't rinsed her mouth afterward. The tangy, acidic scent clung to her breath like a fermenting jar left too long in the heat. Though startled, Oprah remained polite, nodding along with a steady, practiced smile while her hand tightened around a tissue. Every so often she lifted it to her face, pretending to dab her lips while her eyes searched for a subtle escape. The space between them grew quietly awkward. After a few minutes, Oprah stood and offered to grab dessert for both of them, her steps just a little faster than usual. When she returned, she casually pulled her chair back a few inches, creating a safer, more comfortable distance as the conversation continued. Madge Sinclair, a respected veteran whose presence carried quiet power long before she ever stepped into a spotlight. Known for her unforgettable work in Roots and Trapper John, M.D., Sinclair represented a generation of black actors who endured the toughest eras of Hollywood and still earned deep admiration from their peers, even when their names weren't always front and center. By the late 1980s, her legacy lived in every backstage conversation about the pioneers who opened doors when the industry offered few. On October 22, 1989, in Chicago, she wasn't listed as a main cast member at an industry gathering, but she was still invited to share her wisdom and stories that had shaped audiences for years. Backstage felt warm and genuine, filled with long hugs, handshakes, and heartfelt appreciation. When Oprah approached, her smile radiated gratitude for the trailblazers who came before her. She leaned in for an embrace meant to linger, a quiet thank you without words. But in that brief closeness, Oprah caught a strong scent from Sinclair's hair, coconut oil that had once smelled comforting but had turned sour after long travel and relentless schedules. Sinclair had always trusted her home-style hair care routine, keeping her thick hair protected from stage lights and harsh weather. Yet time, exhaustion, and constant movement had layered fresh oil over old. What was once herbal and warm had become heavy and pungent. Oprah, ever the professional, slowed her breathing and gently shortened the hug, stepping away with grace toward a more crowded corner where fans gathered. The moment left behind a strange contrast, deep respect mixed with an unexpected discomfort neither woman would ever publicly acknowledge. A year later, near the end of 1990, Oprah and Sinclair appeared together again in the Christmas episode of ABC's crime series Gabriel's Fire, titled, "'Tis the Season." After filming, a small, private celebration unfolded backstage. As they leaned closer to talk, a different scent emerged, this time from Sinclair's neck and chest. To cope with humid Chicago weather and long filming days, she had layered talcum powder heavily to absorb sweat. But the mixture of old powder and fresh perspiration created a faint, musty odor that lingered in the air. Oprah maintained her warm smile, nodding respectfully while listening to Sinclair reflect on her career. Still, her body reacted instinctively, breathing shallower, leaning slightly forward as discomfort crept in. Ever thoughtful, she found a subtle solution. Oprah asked a staff member to bring cool towels for everyone, framing it as a refreshing gesture after a long shoot. When the towels arrived, she handed one to Sinclair and took one herself. They both wiped away sweat, the atmosphere lightening instantly. The scent softened, the conversation flowed again, and laughter returned to the room. These moments were never shared publicly. They lived only in quiet backstage memories, spaces where brilliance and human imperfection exist side by side. Madge Sinclair remained a symbol of resilience and grace, a beloved figure whose contributions stretched far beyond any fleeting awkwardness. Because when the cameras stop rolling, what lingers isn't just legendary roles or famous names. It's the raw humanity behind them. The truth is, stars are still people, carrying vulnerabilities that never make it onto the screen. Hollywood may look polished and glamorous from afar, but behind the curtains are stories that are messy, real, and deeply human. So if you've ever wondered what lies beyond the spotlight, maybe this glimpse offers a different perspective. Not always pretty, Not always comfortable, but undeniably real. Share your thoughts below. And if you're curious about more untold backstage stories that rarely see the light of day, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what happens when the cameras stop.